What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Celtics Daily with me, Mike Zakarian, as we continue to just follow Brad Stevens around as he figures out what the heck the Boston Celtics are going to do this NBA offseason. We had day one of the draft last night, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. We got to try to figure out if the Celtics are out there still making moves. And then I want to review some of the comments we get from you in a recent video. But before we dive into today's episode, do me a favor. If it's your first time here, hit the subscribe button. We're creeping up right near 500 subscribers, and that does wonders for my self-esteem. So make sure you get in there and hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you know the next time we drop another Celtics daily video. But let's get started. So there were rumors yesterday swirling the entire day. I don't know if just there was blood in the water, if the other organizations saw that the Celtics moved off of their players and they're like, maybe a fire sale's happening. But we saw Drew Holiday go to Portland, which I don't know if you've heard any of the comments behind from Drew Holiday since being moved from Boston to Portland, but when it happened, everybody was out there saying like, well, this is great. Drew's going to serve as a veteran leader for the Portland Trailblazers, which is probably true. But Drew, I don't know if he was mentally prepared to take on that role for a young team that's probably not going to compete. And the reports coming out of Drew's camp is that he's very disappointed that he ended up in Portland. So makes you wonder if Portland is going to reroute him somewhere else. Maybe not before the season starts, but you could see him on a playoff contender as we get closer to the trade deadline. But anyways, you got Porzingis, who, by the way, let's give Atlanta some credit. When we talk about the draft, I'll explain why, but Atlanta has been wheeling and dealing. And then yesterday, reports were all over the place that Danny Ainge was on the phone, or it was probably Austin Ainge, with Brad Stevens trying to get Jaylen Brown. So it doesn't sound like there was any real smoke behind that, but they were saying, according to reports from Shams, according to reports from Brian Windhorst, that there were multiple teams calling the Celtics for Jaylen Brown and Derek White. But you always got to wonder in those situations, like, what do you mean they're calling? Like, are they just being like, hey, we'd like Jaylen Brown for a bag of popcorn? Or are these like legit offers that the Celtics are sitting there thinking about? It doesn't sound like they got anything too juicy. I was still wondering if we were going to see a team like, let's say, the Detroit Pistons swoop in and maybe offer something like Jaden Ivey, Tobias Harris, and some picks to go get Jaylen Brown. Or we saw the New Orleans Pelicans, which, again, we'll talk about the draft a little bit here in a second. They got, like, real frisky in the draft, and, like, maybe you would see a package that included, like, Trey Murphy, a lottery pick that was because they had, like, the 7th or 8th pick last night, and maybe some other picks in the future. So I wasn't sure if we were going to see a team like that, because I do think, or even San Antonio, who ended up taking Dylan Harper, and then I believe, oh gosh, I'm blanking who it was, Carter Bryant in the 14th pick. Like maybe they were going to put together a package as well. But it seems like most of those teams wanted to stand pat. But I do think if a team like the Pelicans, which again, this doesn't mean like trades can still go down, if they offered something like a Trey Murphy, their pick, and then a future asset, I think the Celtics would have had to listen to that a little bit more. The Derek White deals, I really wasn't hearing too much about what that would actually look like. I was curious if like Cleveland was getting involved at all. I know Golden State was so desperate, but I think a Golden State package only includes somebody like Moody, maybe a Pajemski, something like that. And again, I don't know if the Celtics are that desperate to get off of those guys, right? Again, because they, the opposite of the Kevin Durant situation, right? Where they hold the leverage. It's other teams that are interested, especially now that they already got rid of Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis. They got under that tax. They got under the second apron. So it's not like panic mode. We're trying to lop off salary. So now they could just be like, listen, if you come correct with a real offer, sure, we'll have a conversation. But the likelihood is that it's not going to happen, and that Jaylen Brown and Derek White are still going to be on the Celtics. However, Brad did make a couple of comments that I thought were a little bit intriguing last night after the draft that we will talk about here in a second. But let's get to the draft, because as I mentioned in previous videos, your boy last night was at the Barclays Center. We were on the floor. We were out there living our lives, reporting on the NBA draft. It was a really cool experience. My first ever credentialed experience. All right. So we celebrate that. We celebrate the wins. And one of the weirdest things is that when you get into Barclays, right? So you get you check in your own little spot. They basically send you into the basement of the arena. That was a new experience for me. You're kind of with the ushers. And now I'm wondering, did I go to the right spot? No, I did. Very cool experience though was I was able to meet Cooper Flag briefly. I saw some other famous people that I love, famous people, some other media people like the Taylor Rookses of the world. It was a really cool experience to be that close. Uh, However, did not get to see the Celtics pick until very, very late in the night. It was a long night at the Barclays, but a cool night. Hugo, our guy Hugo, is coming to Boston. The Celtics took Hugo Gonzalez with the 28th pick. Now, listen, Hugo, I can't remember who did it in the comments, so I apologize. I don't have this one pulled up. But when we were looking at potential draft selections for the Celtics, there was somebody in the comments that was like, they should be targeting Hugo Gonzalez. And I'll be honest, Hugo was not on my radar. Hadn't looked too much into Hugo, but after you said that, I went and started digging in a little bit. Was still kind of surprised because last night when they got to the 28th pick, even though there were rumors that the Celtics were going to trade up, they ended up not trading up. They stayed with 28. There were guys that they were rumored to be taking, these big guys, right? They had the big man out of Stanford, Maxime Renaud. They also had the big man out of Creighton, Ryan Kalkbrenner. Both of those guys were still on the board, so I thought that was the direction they were going to go. They go get Hugo, and let me give you a little Hugo Gonzalez backdrop. Jonathan Gavoni of Draft Express covers it for ESPN2. Really liked this pick. Thought it was a very sharp pick for the Celtics. He played over in Real Madrid. Now, he's a young dude, only 19, and that was one of the conversations we were talking about in earlier videos, which I keep now. I feel like we're going to have to make it a drinking game. Every time I reference an earlier video, you take a drink. Unless it's in the morning. Do coffee. I don't want you drinking in the morning. But we were saying there was like two paths the Celtics could take here. And I thought whoever they drafted, age range wise, would kind of tell us a little bit about what the future of this squad looks like. And I really thought they were going to go for an older type vet that would actually impact the game right now. Now, moving off of Porzingis and Drew Holiday, giving them a little bit more flexibility, maybe they're like, listen, we plan on bringing Al Horford back. We plan on bringing Luke Cornett back, so we're not really too worried about getting a big. That could be true, and maybe that kind of adjusted the reasoning. But I thought we were going to see like those two centers that I mentioned, Renault and Brenna. Both of those guys are either 22 or 23. They're big men. They could kind of step in right now and fill a void. Hugo, like, listen, he played with Real Madrid, and for those of you that don't like know, like, a lot of it, like Luka was a big. There was a big conversation around this when Luka was over there. Rubio's another one. These dudes are teenagers playing like in a grown ass adult men's basketball league. So he's playing with real adults here. It's not like he's playing against other college kids or kids his age. Like he's playing in like legit. And I don't know how many people pay attention to Euroball, but like real, it's not NBA, but it's right there. It's right there. But anyways, Hugo in his time averaged 5 points, 2.5 boards in 14 minutes a game. J. Kyle Mann of The Ringer, who actually was on the Bill Simmons pod last night into this morning. If you haven't checked that out, he talked a little bit about it. Listen, they gave him some comps in their Ringer guide. I don't know how many of you guys are going to know these names. I'll be honest, I only knew two of them. But it's Nikola Djicic, Ignas Brazinskis, and Vasily Micic. I apologize on the pronunciation. So here's something that they kept saying about Hugo, and Brad talked about this a little bit too afterwards in the press conference. Shout out all of the reporting. Noah Dazal had some really good stuff on this last night. And speaking of Noah, if you're watching this now, later on today on Thursday the 26th, I've got a show on my channel called it's the NBA Bit with Mike Zakarian. But Noah's coming on the show to talk some Celtic stuff. We've got Harrison Fagan from SB Nation talking some Lakers stuff, and then we've got a couple of comedians coming on to just kind of laugh a bit. So come hang out. That's 3:30 Eastern over on the NBA Bit channel. But anyways, Noah had some great comments from Brad's after. From Brad Stevens after just talking about how tough this dude is and how he makes winning plays. And you know, the stats might not jump off the board. You might not see Hugo's numbers and be like, oh, this guy's going to be massive here. And he might not. Listen, it's pick 28. You never know what you're going to get when you get later into the draft. But they do like the way he moves off the ball, the hustle plays that he makes, always making kind of the right high basketball IQ play. And with no Tatum, you know, he's going to get an opportunity to get some run, I think. I think he will. Excited to see him in Summer League. I'm going to be in Vegas in a couple of weeks where we get to watch our guys Jordan Walsh, Baylor Shireman, J.D. Davison, hopefully Hugo Gonzalez, and whoever they pick today. So I mentioned the 28th pick, just kind of being a little touch and go, again, referencing Noah's reporting. Here are a list of some of the other 28 picks that we've seen, or pick 28s in the last couple of years. So last year, Ryan Dunn went to the Phoenix Suns. You had Bryce Sensabaugh went to the Utah Jazz. PBJ, Patrick Baldwin Jr., went to the Warriors. He's been on a bunch of teams now. Former Celtics legend, Jaden Springer, he was taken by the Sixers. So again, Brian Dunn, we'll see what he turns out, but a lot of misses there. But then you got Jaden McDaniels, who we saw in the Western Conference Finals the last couple of years for the Timberwolves. Poole Party, Jordan Poole, who just got traded to the Pelicans. And then Tony Bradley, who we saw in the NBA Finals playing for the Pacers. So again, not like the sexiest of lists, right? But I do think, a good shot. And I think that's what you do here in these late picks. You're just taking shots. The shots at the dartboard, you want high upside, but probably high reward. You think about the Desmond Baines, who went late in the first, early second. Nikola Jokic, famously drafted during the Taco Bell commercial, in the second round. So, who knows? Maybe Hugo Gonzalez, you see, 5 points, 4 boards in 14 minutes a game. That's nothing. I don't know. Maybe he finds a role in Boston, gets to play himself into a good spot. And again, I think that's what this season is going to be like. And again, we're talking a little bit more about Brad's comments here. He did mention, this is Brad Stevens last night on the offseason approach. Brad said there's clearly a need to prioritize regaining our flexibility, maximizing from an asset standpoint what we can. We knew this was coming. This isn't a huge surprise. We have to make sure we prioritize that flexibility. Now, I bring that up because one of the things that was mentioned the second Hugo was selected was is he even going to come over to Spain, from Spain and play, or are we going to stash him and bring him back and bring him over in a year or two? And I was like, why would we do that? Why wouldn't we just bring him over now? And because if you stash him, the money doesn't hit the book until he comes over. So he wouldn't be hitting your salary cap this season. Brad did come out and say that he plans on having him come over and play, and join the team immediately, so I don't think that's there. But those comments kind of stuck in my head a little bit after he drafted him, but then it made me think more about what the rest of this offseason is going to look like, because I do think, myself included and a lot of Celtics fans, we see that Jaylen Brown was not traded, that Derek White was not traded. There's a sigh of relief for most of you, unless you're haters, that they weren't going to get traded. But those comments, and again, let me hit you with it quickly one more time, a clear need to prioritize regaining our flexibility, maximizing from an asset standpoint what we can. Now, I'm not saying that means somebody else is moving, but it does feel that way. And it might just mean Sammy Hauser. It might mean spots around the edges, but I don't think the Jaylen Brown, Derek White stuff are completely off the table yet. Again, if I was a betting man, which I am, I'd be betting on them to still be on the Celtics next season, and that Sam Hauser's the one that gets moved. But I also thought Sam Hauser was going to get moved yesterday during the draft. Now, Day 2 of the draft tips off, I believe, a little bit later today. So I mentioned Kalkbrenner and Maxime Renaud, all right? Celtics pick 32. The draft picks up with pick 31. Both Renaud and Kalkbrenner, the two guys who I thought they might have to trade up for Kalkbrenner. The two guys that I thought they were going to target are still available right now, meaning at least one of those two will be there when the Celtics make the second pick of the second round in pick 32. So one of Kalkbrenner and Renaud could still be there. So I imagine that's the direction the Celtics go. However, I imagined that was the direction they were going to go in the first round. So maybe they don't. I don't know. But that's the day 2 target. So they got one pick left. There's been a ton of draft movement already. And again, I think, if you're so tunnel visioned on what the Celtics are doing, it can feel a little chaotic because, again, big roster moves, right? Porzingis, Holiday, both gone. Look around the rest of the league, man. This is the new NBA. There is just a lot of movement. We saw maybe one of the dumbest trades that I have seen in the history of the draft. That's probably not true. That's hyperbolic. But last night, the New Orleans Pelicans moved up 10 picks to go get Derek Queen, who I am a fan of. I like Derek Queen's game. But they gave up an unprotected first-round pick for next season. So that's what I was talking about Atlanta's offseason, right? They get Kristaps Porzingis. We already talked about that rotation, right? KP, Dyson Daniels, Trae Young, Zachary Rissache. I'm blanking. Did I say Jalen Johnson? I don't know. That's a fun 5 in an East that's up for grabs. They now have an unprotected pick for next season from a team that is, say it with me, bad. That is a bad team. I can't believe New Orleans did that because, again, they're counting on, they don't have DeJounte Murray till the end of the season because he also has an Achilles injury. It's Zion. It's Jordan Poole. They do have Trey Murphy and Herb Jones. Now Derek Queen, Yves Missy. But they're in the Western Conference. They're going to win 40 games max. Max. That's a lottery pick. I couldn't believe it. And what if Zion gets hurt or only plays 30 games like he always does? And there's rumors that Zion might get traded himself. Right? Oh, Jaylen Brown for Trey Murphy and Zion Williamson. Who says no? All right, we do. We say no. We say no. We keep Jaylen Brown. Let's not throw that energy out there. Sorry, I got excited. All right, we'll get back in tomorrow. We'll see what the Celtics do with pick number 2. I'm sure I just messed up the focus on my camera, but listen, that's the world we live in. We're excited. Last thing I wanted to do, we're gonna do a new segment. We'll just check in on some comments. Maybe we answer some stuff the next day. So from yesterday's video, which was a banger. Thanks everybody for watching. Our guy Pelly87. He said, "How can you legally trade players if your ownership hasn't finalized the sale of the team yet?" And then I also saw Pelly say they are all coming back. Nobody's been traded. So I understand a little. The sale has definitely been finalized, by the way. That has been finalized. Our guys went out there and they bought the team. Chisholm is officially the owner. Wick Grossbeck, still a part of the team, still messing around a little bit, but officially it is a sale. But the trade thing I do think is an interesting talking point, because I do think other people have been confused by this too, where like there's been like thank you tweets, but technically the trade has not gone through. And here's why. So they're agreeing to these trades like in principle. So technically, until like the next NBA financial year starts, which is either like it's either July 1. It's like one of the first couple of days in July. Sometimes it's like right after the July 4th, but it's technically like when free agency starts. That's when like the new book starts. So like all these trades are agreed to. It's like word is our bond. But sometimes you'll see like cash added to a deal, another second round pick, something like that get added after the fact. But they can't do it until like the new NBA year, like financial year starts. So even like the Kevin Durant trade, technically that didn't happen. That's why last night, even though that trade happened, when we got to the 10th pick of the draft, it was still Houston making the selection. They took the big man from Duke, which was a great pick. However, he goes to Phoenix, but they didn't really say that during the draft. You know what I'm saying? Like the broadcast did, but there wasn't like, oh, with the 10th pick, the Phoenix Suns. Like they didn't do that. So that's part of the reason. It should be finalized like in a couple of days. But Drew Holiday for sure on the Portland Trailblazers, at least for now, because he does not seem thrilled. And then Kristaps Porzingis for sure on Atlanta. I mean, again, even Tatum put a good Instagram up about it, giving KP some love. It's still going to be weird seeing him in the red, but there you go. That's going to do it for today's video. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Love the engagement. Thank you guys for commenting along. Keep it going. Keep it going. Let's build this thing. Hit the subscribe on the way out. We'll see you tomorrow.